The first step was fencing. So I want to clarify with you whether you have fences or not. So let me give you sort of first, we can talk about this after I show you the example. This is PeerGrade, a Copenhagen-based startup. They have software where professors, instead of grading all the papers that their students bring in, they have a platform where all the students grade each other's papers. Smart for the professor because they don't have to grade 100 papers that are, medium, like average at least. And the students learn twice because, well, they do the paper and they grade someone else's paper. So good for everyone. Now, as you see up here, they have fenced it, right? So we have instructor plans, institution plans, and corporate plans. Depending on where I click, I get into different packaging and there's different pricing and so forth, right? So they have very clearly stated, okay, we want to know who you are, and then people sort of self-identify saying, I am a university, so I go here, or I am a professor, I go there, right? That's what fencing should do, right? It should make your customer self-identify into a specific group that you then create packaging for. So, what creates good fencing? Well, it must be clearly definable by both you and your customers. Meaning that it should be that simple. If it takes more than a second, it's too complicated. So let's say a poor fence is small and large businesses. Because it's arbitrary. Like when do I cross over from one to the other? Even if you write, well, small businesses, 1 to 1,000 employees. A lot of people don't know how many employees they have. And maybe they're seasonal, so they're like, yeah, but in the summer I have 1,500, but in the winter I only have 50. Maybe they're that sort of business. Where am I then, right? So that isn't necessarily a good fence. Let's say a good fence could be public, civic, private companies, or B2B and B2C. That's usually very clear, and I know which one I am. It could also be, am I selling directly to the seniors, or am I selling to the caretakers, the institutions that sort of houses the seniors? Could be a fence. Am I selling to municipalities, or am I selling directly to the citizen? I'm guessing at sort of what issues you have, right? Am I selling to a learning institution, or am I selling directly B2C? Okay. Which also means that it likely is unjumpable, meaning that I can't go from being on one side of the fence one day and then on another side of the fence another day. Like that's a really good test if you have a good fence or not, because it really should be almost impossible in most cases to not to jump the fence. Okay. Also, if you have fencing, it's not a hard requirement, but it's usually helpful if it isn't offensive, if people don't feel sort of tricked or overpriced because of it. So let's say that you go out and say, well, we have pricing directly for seniors, and then we have pricing for caretakers of seniors. If any one of those two groups find that to be unfair or unreasonable in some way, then that's likely an issue with you going to market with that model. But if everybody says, oh, that makes perfect sense because as an individual, I have certain needs, I need a certain version of the product. And if I have another model where I am the one taking care of 300 seniors, then I have different needs and I need different packaging and pricing and so forth. And the rule of thumb is, so I have like a quantitative one, is that it should at least raise your commercial potential by 30%. But an easier way to think of that rule of thumb is it should make the packaging and pricing easier, not harder. So if you're doing packaging and pricing, say, okay, what do I want to sell? I want to sell these things. How do I want to price it? I want to price it this way. But you're having difficulty sort of sorting out something that really works. If you can then say, how about instead of trying to come up with a pricing model, I just come up with two. One for seniors and one for caretakers. And then that is much easier than coming up with a single one, then it's probably a good fence, right? So the test really is, if it just is easier to make two than it is to make one, do two. Or three. Don't do more than three, then it starts to get weird. If you have Zoom, for example, they have 6 or 7. If you go to their website, they will sell to education, they will sell to healthcare, they will sell to corporate, they will have very specific, different packaging, different pricing tables and so forth. They're quite advanced. Don't do that yet, right? Start where you are. But it's just to say that it's being used by PeerGrade and Zoom and others.